My son told me to sleep in my car while my house burned to ashes behind me. What happened next? Well, let's just say karma has a twisted sense of humor. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This story gets absolutely wild. My name is Sofia Martinez. I'm 57, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes losing everything is the best thing that ever happens to you. Though I'll admit, it didn't feel like a blessing when I was picking out organic tomatoes while my life literally went up in smoke. October 15th, 2024. There I was, at Whole Foods, doing my usual Tuesday grocery run, because apparently I'm the kind of person who has a grocery schedule. My neighbor Mr. Chen called while I was having a very serious internal debate about whether Roma or beefsteak tomatoes would better complement my sad, lonely dinner. Sophia, fire, your house. Nothing quite ruins your produce selection like news of an inferno, let me tell you. The Palisades fires had jumped the highway again, because California fires are overachievers like that. I drove like a woman possessed through streets I'd known for 30 years, my cart of organic vegetables abandoned like my common sense. Police barriers blocked every route home. From the Pacific Coast Highway overlook, I got front row seats to the destruction of my entire adult life. The Victorian house where my husband Robert died in my arms, where I raised my son David, where I'd planned to grow old surrounded by photo albums and regret, gone faster than my hope for a peaceful retirement. Orange flames reached toward heaven like the world's most expensive fireworks show, consuming everything I'd worked 3 decades to build. 3 houses on my block survived. Mine wasn't one of them, because apparently my luck is about as reliable as California's power grid. Standing there in my Tuesday grocery clothes, tasting smoke and existential dread, I made the call every mother hopes never to make. My fingers shook as I dialed David's number, already knowing this conversation would change everything. Mom? His voice was distant, distracted. I could hear keyboard clicking, because of course my son would be working during my personal apocalypse. David, honey, I need your help. The house, it's gone. Everything's gone. The pause that followed lasted roughly 17 years. Then I heard her voice, sharp as broken promises. If you let her come here, I'm going to my mother's house, indefinitely. Amanda, my beloved daughter-in-law, who's about as warm as a California wildfire and twice as destructive. My son, the boy I worked 2 jobs to put through Stanford, the man I'd sacrificed my social life to support, sighed like I'd asked him to donate vital organs instead of offering basic human decency to his homeless mother. Mom, I'm really sorry about the house, but you can't stay here. Amanda's under tremendous stress at work right now. Ah, yes. Nothing says family values like prioritizing your wife's workplace anxiety over your mother's sudden homelessness. David, I'm your mother. I literally have nowhere else to go. The insurance will cover a hotel. I'll call you later. Click. And there I stood, holding my phone like a prayer that went unanswered, surrounded by the smell of my destroyed dreams. I just learned the most expensive lesson of my life. Sometimes the people you die for are the same ones who'd let you live in your car. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's got excellent Wi-Fi, and the view from there shows you exactly who people really are. You know what's hilarious about family loyalty? It's apparently a limited-time offer with terms and conditions that nobody reads until it's too late. I'd been David's entire universe for 32 years. When his father died of cancer 5 years ago, David held my hand at the funeral and made promises that sounded beautiful in grief speak. We're a team now, Mom. You and me against the world. Sweet sentiment. Too bad it came with an invisible expiration date that coincided with his meeting Amanda Richardson. Let me paint you a picture of Amanda, 28, blonde in that I spend more on hair than most people spend on cars way, with a smile that could sell ice to polar bears, and probably has. She worked as a digital marketing consultant, which I quickly learned was millennial speak, for I have mysterious income sources and a LinkedIn profile full of buzzwords. Now, I'm not saying I disliked Amanda from day 1. That would be unfair and judgmental. I disliked her from day -3, when David showed me her photo, and she looked like someone who'd steal your parking spot and then compliment your car. From our first meeting, something felt off. She asked more questions about our family finances than my accountant, steered conversations away from her background like she was avoiding an FBI manhunt, and had this charming habit of playing victim whenever oxygen was present. Sophia, she'd say during family dinners, tilting her head with the kind of fake concern usually reserved for broken appliances. Don't you think you might interfere a tiny bit too much in David's life? I mean, he's a grown man who can make his own decisions. The way she said it, all sugar and poison, made caring about my son's well-being sound like a personality disorder. When I offered to help pay for their wedding, I had $50,000 saved from Robert's life insurance. Amanda's response deserved its own theatrical review. Oh, Mother Martinez, you're so thoughtful, but David and I have everything handled. We wouldn't want to burden you financially, especially at your age. At my age? I'm 57, not deceased. That evening, David called with the fury of a man whose girlfriend had spent 2 hours crying into designer tissues. Apparently, I'd offered money in a condescending way and humiliated Amanda by implying they couldn't afford their own wedding. I tried explaining that helping with wedding costs is literally what parents do. It's in the job description somewhere between unconditional love and worrying until you die. But David had already joined Team Amanda. Mom, why can't you just be happy for us? Why does everything have to be about control? And that's how offering to pay for flowers became a hostile takeover attempt. Amanda could twist reality better than a pretzel factory, and David believed every word because love makes even engineers forget how to think critically. The worst part? She made manipulation look effortless. A strategically placed tear, a trembling voice, and suddenly I was the villain in my own son's story. Maybe I should have fought harder. Maybe I should have seen through her performance sooner. But when you love someone, you give them the benefit of the doubt, even when that doubt feels suspiciously like a knife in your back. I just had no idea how deep Amanda was willing to twist that knife. The isolation campaign began with the subtlety of a surgeon and the patience of a serial killer. Amanda didn't declare war. She just quietly rearranged David's entire world until I was edited out of the picture. Phase 1. Geographic separation. They moved to San Francisco, renting a $4,800 apartment that David absolutely couldn't afford on his salary alone. I know because I helped him create his first budget in college, back when I was still allowed to care about his financial well-being. Amanda's business is really taking off, David explained during one of our increasingly brief phone calls. She needs to be closer to her clients in the city. Right, her mysterious clients who never seem to need actual meetings or produce identifiable results. But sure, let's uproot your life for Amanda's imaginary empire. 2 hours away from me. What a delightful coincidence. Phase 2. Communication control. Phone calls became rarer than honest politicians. When I did call, Amanda always answered with a voice so sweet it could cause diabetes. Oh, hi, Mother Martinez. David's just stepped into the shower. Or, he's taking a well-deserved nap. Or, he's on a super important work call and can't be disturbed. He'd call back maybe once every 10 attempts. And when he did, conversations felt like obligatory check-ins rather than genuine connection. Phase 3. Holiday hijacking. Thanksgiving 2023. Amanda has food poisoning. Christmas. Amanda has a terrible migraine and needs complete darkness and silence. I spent Christmas alone, microwaving a turkey dinner for one while watching romantic comedies where families actually enjoyed each other's company. The silence in my house was so loud it had its own echo. Then I made my first tactical error. I checked Instagram. Las Vegas. 3 days of pool parties, spa treatments, and expensive dinners. Amanda in designer everything. David looking happier than I'd seen him in months. The geotags told a story of luxury and leisure that somehow coincided perfectly with her migraine. When I confronted him the next day, David's response was swift and brutal. Mom, stop stalking us on social media. Can't you just be happy that we're happy? Amanda was genuinely sick. We needed a few recovery days. Why do you always have to make everything about you? And there it was. Caring about my son's honesty had somehow become narcissistic behavior. Amanda's training program was working perfectly. The next year was a masterclass in psychological warfare. She convinced David I was possessive and unable to accept his independence. She scheduled their rare visits during my work hours. She started calling me Mother Martinez instead of Sophia, technically respectful, but it felt like being addressed by a collections agency. By the time my house burned down, I was already a stranger in my son's life. Amanda had successfully performed a relationship amputation so clean, I barely felt it happening. But here's what Amanda didn't understand about mothers. We're like elephants. We remember everything, and we never forgive anyone who hurts our babies. She thought she'd won the war by conquering David's heart. What she didn't realize was that she'd just made her first real enemy, and I had absolutely nothing left to lose. The Motel 6 on Sepulveda Boulevard became my temporary palace of despair. $89 a night for accommodations that made prison cells look like luxury suites. The coffee maker produced liquid that violated several Geneva Convention articles. And the walls were so thin, I became intimately acquainted with my neighbor's relationship problems, snoring patterns, and questionable television choices. David didn't call, not once, not even to confirm I hadn't been murdered by the questionable stains on the carpet. The closest thing to family contact was a text on day 4. "How's the insurance stuff going?" Like I was updating him on routine car maintenance instead of the complete destruction of my adult life. My savings account bled money faster than my faith in human decency. $1,200 and falling, while the insurance company decided my house fire needed more investigation than a presidential assassination. Apparently, wildfire claims trigger extra scrutiny because people occasionally commit arson for money. Who knew? Day 8, I graduated from the motel to my Honda Civic. The Walmart parking lot became my bedroom, complete with a clearance pillow that smelled like industrial chemicals and a blanket that provided roughly the same warmth as thoughts and prayers. Sleeping in your car at 57 is a special kind of education in humility. Your spine discovers new ways to hate you, your dignity files for divorce, and every police cruiser becomes a source of existential terror. I kept expecting David to develop basic human consciousness and realize his mother was living like a refugee 20 minutes from his cozy apartment. Expectations, like my house, turned out to be highly flammable. Miguel, the Walmart night security guard, became my guardian angel of minimum wage kindness. Around day 12, he started checking on me instead of moving me along. "Mrs. Martinez, you holding up okay tonight? I got some decent coffee in the office if you want." A stranger making $10 an hour showed more concern for my welfare than my own son. Miguel never asked invasive questions, never made me feel ashamed, just treated me like a human being who deserved basic dignity. Meanwhile, David's silence was so complete, I started wondering if Amanda had convinced him I was dead. 2 months. 2 months of sleeping in parking lots, washing my hair in public restrooms, and learning that rock bottom has a basement. 2 months of David not once checking if his mother had shelter, food, or the will to live. That's when my phone rang with a Boston area code. "Mrs. Martinez? James Whitmore from Whitmore, Patterson and Associates. I'm calling about the estate of Margaret Vanderbilt Chen Martinez. Great Aunt Margaret. The family eccentric who lived in Beacon Hill Mansion, collected wine worth more than most people's cars, and attended family functions like a mysterious fairy godmother who criticized everyone's life choices. Mrs. Martinez, you're the sole beneficiary of her estate. Total value, approximately $5.9 million. I almost dropped the phone into my lap, certain the parking lot fumes had caused hallucinations. She left a note, the lawyer continued, said you were the only family member who never asked her for money. For the first time in 2 months, I laughed until my ribs hurt. Trust Aunt Margaret to have perfect timing and a twisted sense of irony. Sometimes the universe doesn't just close doors. It burns down the entire house and then hands you the keys to a mansion. But first, I had some very important business to attend to, involving a certain daughter-in-law and her complete underestimation of what a desperate mother can accomplish with unlimited resources and nothing left to lose. Money, as it turns out, doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your entire personality. Within 3 weeks of Margaret's legal windfall, I went from homeless car dweller to owner of a $2.8 million estate in Carmel by the Sea. 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the Pacific Ocean, and a wine cellar that would make Margaret's ghost weep with pride. The master bedroom was larger than my entire previous existence, with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned sunrise into personal entertainment. The irony was so thick I could serve it at dinner parties. While my son thought I was still struggling with insurance paperwork and temporary housing, I was living in a house that cost more than his annual salary times 50. I took my time settling in, learning every corner of my sanctuary. The kitchen had marble countertops that probably cost more than Amanda's entire wardrobe. Each wine bottle in the cellar was older than my relationship with disappointment, some worth enough to fund a small country. But the best part? The absolute, profound silence. No Amanda's performative laughter, no walking on eggshells around David's carefully managed moods. Just me, the sound of waves, and the slow reconstruction of a woman who'd forgotten she was allowed to take up space. After 3 weeks of blissful isolation, I decided to conduct a little social experiment. I posted one carefully curated photograph on Facebook, just my bare feet on the deck railing, ocean stretching to infinity, captioned, "Sometimes the best views come after the worst storms." David called within 90 minutes. I timed it. "Mom, I saw your post. Where exactly are you? That view looks expensive." I could practically hear his confusion through the phone. Poor David, trying to reconcile his assumption of my continued misery with photographic evidence of oceanfront living. "Oh, you know about Aunt Margaret? She left me everything in her will. I used some of the money to buy a small place by the water. Nothing fancy. Wow, I'm so happy for you, Mom. You really deserve some good news." Deserve. Interesting word choice from someone who'd left me homeless for 2 months. Amanda and I were just talking about how we should come visit sometime. Of course they were. Amanda, who hadn't spoken to me since the Paleolithic era, who'd engineered my exile with surgical precision, suddenly had opinions about family bonding time. Sure enough, within 2 hours my Instagram notifications exploded with a message from my beloved daughter-in-law. "Mother Martinez, what a stunning view. David and I would absolutely love to visit and see your beautiful new home." The woman who'd convinced my son to choose her comfort over his mother's shelter had suddenly developed an interest in oceanfront real estate and family relationships. Amazing how $6 million can cure even the most terminal cases of son-in-law syndrome. I decided to play their game, but this time I'd be writing the rules. "Of course you should visit. The house is enormous. Plenty of space for everyone. I'd love nothing more than to have family here." Time to discover exactly what Amanda was willing to do for money, and more importantly, time to find out what she'd already done that I didn't know about yet. Something told me this story was about to get much more interesting than real estate investments and family reconciliation. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but when someone spends a year isolating you from your own child, they usually have bigger plans than just emotional manipulation. I was about to find out exactly how big those plans really were. Planning a family reunion requires careful preparation, especially when you suspect one of the family members might be a professional sociopath. So naturally, I decided to do some background research on my beloved daughter-in-law. Call it motherly curiosity with a side of vindictive fact-finding. I hired Marcus Webb, Los Angeles' most expensive private investigator, former FBI, 30 years of experience, and a daily rate that would make most people reconsider their life choices. But when you're sitting on Margaret's fortune, $5,000 a day feels like pocket change well spent on potential entertainment. "I want to know everything about Amanda Richardson," I told him over overpriced coffee in Beverly Hills. Employment history, financial records, family background, college transcripts, parking tickets, library fines. If she's ever sneezed in public, I want documentation. Marcus smiled like I'd just handed him Christmas morning. "Mrs. Martinez, people like Amanda always leave trails. You can reinvent your personality, but you can't rewrite your digital footprint. Give me 3 weeks." While Marcus conducted his electronic archaeology, I studied Amanda like she was a final exam in advanced manipulation. Her social media presence was curated with museum-quality precision. Expensive restaurants, designer outfits, luxury vacations that cost more per day than most people's monthly rent. All funded by David's salary while she played entrepreneur with her mysterious digital marketing consulting business that seemed to involve a lot of Instagram posts and 0 actual clients. Here's what didn't add up. No professional website beyond a basic template that screamed, "I made this in 20 minutes." No business license registered with California. No tax returns showing business income. Just a LinkedIn profile stuffed with buzzwords that could mean absolutely nothing. David, brilliant with engineering equations and hopeless with human psychology, never questioned where Amanda's spending money originated or why her clients never required actual meetings or produced tangible results. I invited them for a long weekend with calculated enthusiasm. "The guest wing has its own kitchen and bathroom. You'll have complete privacy. Plus, I thought it might be nice for us to really get to know each other." Amanda practically purred when David called to confirm. "She sounds so generous. I think I completely misjudged her character before. Maybe we just needed time to understand each other better." Right. The woman who'd orchestrated my social exile had suddenly developed insights into family psychology and the healing power of oceanfront bonding time. I spent the weeks before their visit making some strategic home improvements. Smart locks with app control, updated security system, and a consultation with a tech specialist about creating monitoring zones throughout the house. "You want comprehensive audio-visual coverage?" the technician asked. "For security purposes, of course. When you have valuable assets, you can never be too careful about knowing exactly what's happening in your home." He nodded like wealthy people requesting elaborate surveillance was perfectly normal Tuesday business. 3 days before their scheduled visit, Marcus called with his preliminary findings. "Mrs. Martinez, we need to talk. What I've found, let's just say Amanda Richardson has some very interesting hobbies that don't involve digital marketing." His voice carried that particular tone investigators use when they've discovered something that's going to ruin someone's entire worldview. "How interesting are we talking? The kind that usually involves federal charges and plea bargains. Can you meet me tomorrow?" I hung up with a smile that probably looked terrifying to my reflection. Finally, some answers. And if Amanda thought she could manipulate her way through a weekend at my house while hiding criminal secrets, she was about to learn that some mothers don't forgive, and some games have consequences she never saw coming. Marcus arrived at my house looking like a man who'd spent 3 weeks digging through someone's dirty laundry and found actual bodies buried underneath. "Mrs. Martinez, Amanda Richardson's employment history is more fiction than fact. She's been collecting unemployment benefits for 18 months while claiming to run a consulting business. That's textbook fraud, but honestly, that's the least concerning thing I discovered." He opened a folder thick enough to choke someone, filled with documents that were about to destroy what was left of my faith in my son's judgment. "She's opened multiple credit cards in David's name over the past 2 years. I'm tracking 6 different accounts with a combined debt of over $70,000. She's been making minimum payments from his checking account, keeping the statements hidden." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. 70,000? It gets worse. She's been systematically accessing his investment accounts, transferring money into cryptocurrency wallets he doesn't know exist. Approximately 35,000 in Bitcoin and Ethereum over the past year. I set down my cup before I threw it at something expensive. What else? Amanda Richardson didn't exist before 2019. Birth records show Amy Peterson from Phoenix, Arizona. The identity switch coincides with someone named Marcus Peterson getting arrested for financial fraud in Arizona. Peterson? Brother, cousin, or partner? Probably all three. "Mrs. Martinez, your son isn't dating a manipulative girlfriend. He's dating a professional con artist with a documented criminal history." The walls of my beautiful house suddenly felt like they were closing in. David wasn't just being emotionally manipulated. He was being systematically robbed by someone who'd made financial fraud into performance art. "There's more," Marcus continued with the enthusiasm of someone about to detonate a nuclear bomb. "Amy Peterson has a pattern. She targets recently divorced or widowed men with substantial assets, creates emotional dependency, then drains their resources before disappearing. David fits her victim profile perfectly." I stared out at the Pacific, watching waves crash against rocks, and realized my son wasn't just stupid in love. He was being hunted by someone who'd turned relationship fraud into a career path. How many others? At least 3 that I've documented. Michael Thompson in Phoenix, lost his house and retirement savings. James Rodriguez in Denver, bankruptcy and divorce. Thomas Chen in Las Vegas, currently in therapy and living with his parents at 45. Each name hit like a physical blow. David wasn't Amanda's first victim. He was just the latest mark in what appeared to be a multi-state crime spree disguised as romance. That evening, David and Amanda arrived for their weekend visit, all smiles and weekend bags. Amanda hugged me like we were long-lost best friends, gushing about my house, my taste, my incredible transformation since the tragedy. "Mother Martinez, this place is absolutely magical. The energy here is so healing. I can see why you chose it for your new beginning." I smiled and played gracious hostess while mentally calculating prison sentences for identity theft and fraud. She had no idea that every word, every gesture, every fake compliment was being recorded for posterity and potential legal proceedings. But here's what I still didn't understand. If Amanda was such a professional criminal, why was she still with David after 2 years? Her previous cons had been quick strikes lasting 6 to 8 months. What was she waiting for? What was the bigger prize that made my son worth this much time and patience? I had a feeling this weekend was going to provide some very educational answers. And Amanda was about to discover that some mothers don't just get mad, they get forensic. The weekend started like a perfectly normal family visit, if you ignore the part where I was essentially hosting a federal crime scene in real time. Amanda couldn't help herself. She photographed everything with the methodical precision of someone documenting evidence for future legal proceedings, which, ironically, was exactly what she was doing, just not the way she intended. The wine cellar with its vintage collections worth more than most people's houses. The art pieces I'd inherited from Margaret, each with insurance valuations that made Amanda's eyes light up like slot machines. The master bedroom with its $1 million ocean views and walk-in closet larger than most apartments. These weren't casual vacation photos. These were reconnaissance shots. David, sweet and completely oblivious, spent Saturday morning working by the pool while Amanda explored my house with the dedication of someone planning a very elaborate heist. Saturday afternoon, while David napped in the sun, Amanda made a phone call from the guest bedroom. Thanks to my new security system, I heard every word from my monitoring station. The place is even better than the photos suggest. We're talking serious money, 8 figures minimum. The wine collection alone could fund our retirement. I nearly choked on my iced tea. Our retirement? Who exactly was our? Marcus, you should see this setup. She's got investment portfolios just sitting on her desk like grocery lists. The woman has no idea about digital security. Marcus, the same name as her apparent partner from Arizona. How wonderfully family-oriented of them. Give me 2 more weeks to document everything, then we execute the plan. By Christmas, we'll be somewhere with no extradition treaties and enough money to live like royalty. The call ended. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the recording device, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Amanda wasn't just stealing from David. She was planning to rob me, too. And David? He was apparently just collateral damage in whatever scheme she'd been orchestrating for 2 years. Sunday morning brought even more educational entertainment. While David showered, Amanda approached me with tears already prepared in her calculating blue eyes. Mother Martinez, I need to confess something. David and I have been struggling financially. His company is having problems, and we're worried about our future together. The performance was flawless. Trembling voice, perfectly timed tear, hands clasped in supplication. Of course I'll help however I can. Family supports, family. You're so generous. I was wondering, would it be possible for David to have access to your financial accounts, just in case of emergency? And there it was, the real reason for this bonding weekend. What a thoughtful suggestion. We should definitely set something up. Amanda practically glowed with anticipated victory. She had no idea she just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud while being recorded in high-definition audio. But I still had questions. If Amanda was such a professional, why telegraph her intentions so obviously? Why risk exposure when she could have been more subtle? Monday morning, Marcus called with information that answered every question and raised a dozen new ones that made my blood pressure spike into stroke territory. Mrs. Martinez, we need to meet immediately. What I found about Amanda's real plan. You're going to want to sit down for this conversation. His voice carried the tone of someone about to deliver news that would fundamentally alter reality. It's not just financial fraud. Amanda and her partner have been running a much more sophisticated operation. And Mrs. Martinez, you were never supposed to survive long enough to inherit that money. The phone almost slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers. Survive? What exactly did that mean? Marcus arrived at my house looking like a man who'd discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his professional career. Mrs. Martinez, sit down. What I'm about to tell you changes everything we thought we knew about Amanda's plan. He opened a file that looked thick enough to contain someone's entire criminal biography, which, as it turned out, was exactly what it contained. Amanda Richardson, Amy Peterson, has a partner named Marcus Rivera, ex-military, dishonorably discharged, currently wanted in 3 states for arson and insurance fraud. Arson? My mouth went completely dry. They've been running this scam for 5 years. Amy targets wealthy individuals, usually recent widows or divorcees. She gathers financial information, while Marcus arranges accidents that either generate insurance payouts or eliminate witnesses who might complicate their theft plans. The room started spinning as Marcus opened the folder to reveal photographs that made my stomach clench with terror. House fires, dozens of them, all in areas prone to natural disasters, all when the homeowners were conveniently away, all resulting in either massive insurance claims or convenient deaths that left inheritances to manipulated surviving family members. The Palisades fire, Mrs. Martinez. It wasn't random. I couldn't breathe. The words came out like broken glass. What? 3 days before your house burned, Amy transferred $25,000 to a shell company Marcus operates, the same company that was contracted for pest control services in your neighborhood 2 weeks before the fire. The organic tomatoes. My Tuesday routine. The fact that Amanda knew exactly when I'd be shopping because David had mentioned my schedule during our last awkward family dinner. She tried to kill me? The plan was simple. House fire eliminates you. David inherits your insurance payout and property. Amanda marries him and gains access to everything. Then David has a tragic accident and she inherits it all. Clean, profitable, and she'd done it successfully twice before. I stared at the photographs of burned houses, each one representing someone's destroyed life, someone's planned murder disguised as natural disaster. But then Aunt Margaret died and left you $6 million, Marcus continued. Suddenly, Amanda had a much bigger prize to target. Why settle for $300,000 in insurance money when she could steal $6 million in inheritance? So she kept David alive because she needed access to my money. Exactly. But Mrs. Martinez, the timeline has accelerated. I found communications between Amy and Marcus. They're planning to execute their endgame within 2 weeks. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the photographs. Execute? House fire here, while you're asleep. David inherits everything as your closest living relative. Amanda marries him immediately, gains legal access to the inheritance. Then David has a tragic accident, probably another fire, and she disappears with everything. The beautiful ocean view outside my windows suddenly looked like a backdrop for my own murder scene. This woman hadn't just isolated me from my son or stolen his money. She'd tried to kill me once and was planning to finish the job, along with murdering David once he'd served his purpose. How long do we have? Based on their communications, they're planning the fire for next weekend, probably during your next family visit. I looked at Marcus, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. Amanda thought she was playing chess with a grieving widow who'd stumbled into unexpected money. She had no idea she'd just declared war on someone who'd lost everything once and had absolutely nothing left to fear. Marcus, how do we make sure Amy Peterson and Marcus Rivera spend the rest of their lives in federal prison? He smiled with the satisfaction of a hunter who'd finally cornered the most dangerous prey of his career. Very carefully, with more evidence than any jury could ignore, and with their own recorded confessions of planned murder, it was time to turn the tables. Amanda wanted to play with fire? Perfect. Let's see how she handled getting burned. Planning to catch a killer requires a special kind of cold-blooded patience. And fortunately, rage had burned away any lingering maternal warmth I might have felt toward preserving Amanda's well-being. I called David the next morning, injecting just the right amount of lonely gratitude into my voice. Honey, I've been thinking about this weekend. You both seemed so relaxed here, and it occurred to me that I'd love to have you back for a longer visit. Maybe a full week? Really? That sounds amazing, Mom. Amanda's been talking nonstop about how peaceful your place feels. I bet she has. Nothing says peaceful like planning multiple murders in an oceanfront setting. Perfect. How about next week? I'll stock the kitchen, and we can really spend some quality time together. Within an hour, Amanda had texted me with enthusiasm that would have seemed genuine if I didn't know she was planning to incinerate me in my sleep. Mother Martinez, I'm so excited for our extended visit. This feels like the perfect opportunity to really bond as family. Sure, sweetheart. Let's bond over your impending arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. I spent the week turning my house into the world's most expensive evidence-gathering operation. Marcus connected me with federal investigators who helped install recording equipment that would make the NSA jealous. Every conversation, every phone call, every whispered confession would be captured in courtroom-quality audio and video. But the real masterstroke was the digital bait I created. Fake financial documents showing additional offshore accounts, property deeds for non-existent real estate, and investment portfolios that made my actual inheritance look like pocket change. She'll take the bait, Marcus assured me. Criminals like Amy can't resist a bigger score. Tuesday morning, they arrived with weekend bags and murder plans disguised as family bonding time. Amanda hugged me with Oscar-worthy enthusiasm while I smiled and calculated prison sentences. For 3 days, I played perfect hostess while Amanda played perfect future murderer. She helped with cooking, asked detailed questions about my estate planning, and suggested we update my will to make sure David is properly protected. David was genuinely happy, probably for the first time in months. Mom, I'm so glad you and Amanda are finally connecting. She really does care about family. Poor David, still believing in fairy tales while living in a crime scene. Thursday night, Amanda made the call I'd been waiting for. Marcus, everything's in place. The fire accelerants are positioned, and I've documented all the financial accounts. Tomorrow night, we execute the plan. What about the son? He'll be asleep in the guest wing. The fire will look like an electrical malfunction that spread too quickly. Tragic accident, no survivors, and we'll be in Mexico by Sunday with enough money to disappear forever. Friday morning, I suggested Amanda and I drive to town for some girl time while David worked. She practically skipped to my car, probably calculating her share of murder money. We drove directly to the FBI field office instead of the spa. Mother Martinez, I think you made a wrong turn. No, Amy Peterson, this is exactly where we need to be. I watched her face transform from confusion to panic to calculating rage in 3 seconds. Professional criminals adapt quickly when their freedom evaporates. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but David will never forgive you for destroying his happiness. David will forgive me when he learns you plan to murder both of us for money. Special Agent Sarah Chen was waiting inside with Marcus and a file containing enough evidence to send Amy and Marcus to federal prison until the sun burned out. Recorded conversations planning my murder. Financial records showing the pattern of previous victims. Digital evidence linking them to multiple house fires across 3 states. And most damning, the accelerants they'd already planted in my house, discovered and photographed by federal investigators. Amy Peterson, Agent Chen said, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, arson, fraud, and about 12 other federal charges. Amy lunged at me as they cuffed her, screaming threats that would have terrified me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like the tantrums of someone who'd finally met her match. You have no idea what you've done. David will never forgive you for this. Actually, Amy, I think David will be quite grateful that I saved his life. The drive back to tell David that his girlfriend had planned to kill us both was the longest conversation of my life. But sometimes the truth, no matter how devastating, is the only gift you can give someone you love. David took the news about as well as anyone would take, learning their girlfriend was a serial killer who'd been planning to murder them for inheritance money. He sat in my living room, staring at the federal arrest warrant with Amy's photograph attached. While I explained 2 years of systematic manipulation, financial theft, and premeditated murder plots. She tried to kill you, he whispered, his voice barely audible. The fire, that wasn't an accident? And she was planning to kill you too, once she had legal access to my inheritance through marriage. David, you weren't her boyfriend. You were her final victim. His hands shook as he scrolled through the evidence on Marcus's laptop. Financial records showing $70,000 in stolen debt. Photos of accelerants found in our house. Recorded conversations planning our deaths with the casual tone most people use to discuss dinner plans. I chose her over you, he said finally. When you lost everything, when you needed help, I chose someone who was planning to murder us both. The guilt in his voice was so thick I could taste it. But honestly, after everything I'd been through, David's remorse felt less like an apology and more like the first step toward rebuilding something we'd both allowed to break. You were being manipulated by a professional criminal. Amy Peterson made fraud and murder into an art form. You weren't stupid, David. You were targeted. Over the next few months, the federal case against Amy and Marcus became a prosecutor's dream. 3 states' worth of evidence, multiple victims willing to testify, and recorded confessions of planned murder. Amy Peterson was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. Marcus Rivera received the same sentence when they found him hiding in a cabin in Montana. David moved into my guest house while he began the long process of rebuilding a life that had been systematically destroyed by someone he'd trusted completely. Therapy, financial counseling, and the slow work of learning to trust his own judgment again. 6 months later, we were having coffee on the deck, watching pelicans dive for fish, while David's credit score slowly climbed out of the depths of identity theft hell. Mom, he said quietly, I need you to know something. When I told you to find somewhere else to sleep that night, that's going to stay with me forever. David, you were being controlled by someone who'd made psychological manipulation into a science. I don't blame you for falling for a professional, but I should have known. I should have seen through her act. I looked at my son, my brilliant, naive, emotionally generous son, who'd been selected as prey by someone who specialized in exploiting those exact qualities. Honey, the fact that you trusted someone who seemed to love you doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. Amy Peterson spent 2 years studying your psychology and crafting the perfect performance to exploit your best instincts. He nodded, but I could see the shame would take time to fade. That's okay. We had time now, and guilt makes excellent fertilizer for personal growth. Besides, I added with a smile that felt like my old self returning, look how this story ended. She's in federal prison. You're alive and learning to spot red flags. And I got to experience the deep satisfaction of watching a serial killer get arrested while wearing handcuffs that matched her fake personality. David laughed for the first time since Amy's arrest. When you put it that way, it sounds almost like justice. Justice with a side of poetic irony. Amy thought she was playing chess with a grieving widow. Instead, she played Russian roulette with a mother who'd lost everything and had nothing left to fear. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the Pacific crash against rocks that had survived much worse storms than one criminal's greed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's simply surviving long enough to watch karma deliver justice with interest. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.